Hello and welcome back, sleepywhatsit here, and I have another miniatures video for you. In today's video, we're going to be continuing my series on experimenting using contrast and texture paints from Citadel to make bases for our miniatures. This is the third video in this series. I'll link down below if you haven't seen the previous two, which included doing some Warpstone Cracked Earth bases and some more tidal aquatic bases. This is likely to be the last video in this series for a while, just because I don't have additional ideas of what we're going to be doing. But in this video, we're going to be completing the RGB triplet that we started with the previous two bases by making some red lava bases. Because we're working with contrast paints, I'm going to be thinning them a little bit with contrast medium just to make sure that they flow well and so that they're not super dense, since I want to kind of do 2 layers of paint on most of these bases. Unlike the previous videos where I used Gray Seer as the undercoat so to get a cool gray tone, I'm using Wraithbone on these bases because we're doing more of a fire, so we want a warm texture. The darkest contrast paint we're going to be using today is Blood Angel's Red for our deep red color, which I will concede is probably too dark actually for the applications you'll see on some of the bases. The mid-tone orange color that's going to be used is Gryph-Hound Orange from the contrast line. And the yellow that we're going to be using is Iyanden Yellow. So for this experiment, I wanted to try out a variety of combinations of things. So what we have going on here is you can see I'm basing out with the first layer of paint, thinned out a little bit so it isn't super opaque, but we will have a couple of yellow bases, a smattering of orange bases, and another couple of red bases. The idea here is that for the yellow bases, I'm going to do one base that has yellow and then a second layer of yellow on it to give its color depth, and then we're going to do a yellow with orange on top of it, and then for orange we'll do an orange with orange on top of it, and an orange with yellow on top of it. We'll do a couple, actually, of those orange with oranges so we can get different texture pastes in here, which we'll discuss in a moment. And then for the red, we'll do a red with red on it, and then we'll do a red with orange and then yellow on it. So applying these paints here just to get our texture, to get it established. We'll go away and let this dry. And so now that we've let the first layer of paint dry here, we're just continuing on with these bases and as doing basically the prescribed paint jobs I was saying before. So for one of the yellow bases, we'll be doing a second layer of yellow, but for another one, we'll be doing the second layer will be an orange. And we're just doing the same thing as we did with the first layer, thinning it with contrast medium. I've somewhere about a 1-to-1 ratio, a little bit less contrast medium than that, but in general, thinning it out so it's not, because what we want here is to pool a little bit and give some detail to the color, and just kind of going through all of these. And again, letting this fully dry before we move on to the next stage. So now that we've established all of our kind of base undercoat color on these bases, what we want to do is now actually do the texturization of them. So for the vast majority of these bases, I am going to use Martian Ironearth, which is a crackle medium from Citadel that has a red hue to it because we're working with lava. The intent is to put this down, let it crackle, and then we'll darken it to make it look more like hardened lava. For one of the orange bases, I'm also going to try using Mordant Earth, which is a black texture paste that crackles, and then we'll have to try and bring some red into it to give it a more appropriate theming to it. I did, for one of the orange bases, actually try Martian Iron Crust, which is a more thick, gel-like texture paint from Citadel. I really didn't like how it turned out. That may be a symptom of improper application on my part, but that one kind of got thrown out of the batch as we were going along. For some weird reason, my Martian Ironearth, even though it was a new bottle, was only half full. I don't know if it's dried out but that was an unusual thing. If you've never worked with these texture pastes before, as you can see here, I'm putting it on relatively thick. If you put it on too thin, it either won't crackle, it just looks like you laid down a layer of primer, or you'll get very thin, scaly type crackling, and that's not the effect we want here. By putting it on so thick, we should get thick chunks sitting on top of our lava. With this texture paste, it also takes a very long time to dry, on the order of hours. I normally let this sit overnight just to make sure that it's fully dried. So that's what we're going to do, is just let this dry overnight. And now it's the next day, and you can see all the crackling that we have going on here. All of the paint is dried. It's pulled apart a little bit as it's dried and exposed our undercoat through, which is really the effect we're going for. I'm not really sure what went wrong here, but you can see on some of these bases there's this white paint. Like I'm unclear on what this is. It suspiciously looks like the medium from the crackle paint separated out and dried separately from the colored paint. Because it's not, this is the wrong color to suggest that we pulled up the paint that was on top of the primer. Like, because this isn't the warm Wraithbone white. This is a different white showing through. So I'm not sure what this is. It happened with a lot of my Ironearth bases. I don't know if maybe I just have a bad batch of Ironearth, because as I was mentioning before, it's not, that my pot was like half full when I opened it up, so I don't know if I just have a bad batch of it. I've seen this with some of the other crackle paints. I'll just like little bits of it, nothing on this level. So as opposed to scrapping this, we're going to try and fix this, because if you were working on an already completed like tabbed base where you can't just toss away the base because you've painted your entire model, we kind of have to figure out a way to move forward. So what I'm going to do here is work into all of these cracks where there's a lot of white showing through some of the texture, or not texture, the contrast paint that we've been working with before. So because you can see like on some of these, the red really doesn't show through well, we're going to try the yellows and the oranges depending on the specific base that we're working on. This is not my preferred way to do this, obviously, because this is going to be because I'm trying to make a simple, easy to do base. But, you know, we need to figure out how we can fix this. So as I said, I'm just going to work through here, putting a little bit of the contrast down over this white and hopefully tinging it enough that it will look fine. This is just going to be a bit tedious. I'm a little bit less concerned about getting the contrast paints over the red of the Ironearth or the black of the Mordant Earth, because of the fact that we are going to be dry brushing and doing more work on this, so any like overage is probably not going to show up. Also, like yellow on red, it doesn't really show through that much. Now that we've got all of that white cleaned up as best as we can, what we're going to do is move on to dry brushing these bases to kind of finish them off. I've definitely heard people complain or have issues with the crackle paints from Citadel when dry brushing, that it comes off easily. I've personally never experienced that. I have the sneaking suspicion that they may not be letting it dry long enough. Like when I say it takes hours for this to fully dry and cure, we're talking overnight, like 9-12 hour type dry time. So that's the length of time I let it dry, and I've never had it pull off when dry brushing, but that may be also symptomatic of like the conditions I'm painting in or something like that. For the first layer of dry brushing on everything, we're going to be using burnt red from Vallejo, which is a dark red, brownish toned paint. There's a variety of other brands. This is the one I happen to have available that I like the look of. So we're just going to be dry brushing this pretty heavily everywhere, because we're trying to a certain extent, eliminate on the Ironearth the brighter red tone. If we could, or if one could, I guess, mix this into the original crackle paint to avoid having to do this so that we just get this dark tone everywhere, but I didn't do that. We're also on the Mordant Earth going to be dry brushing it, and this is to give because we already have a black here, we're trying to give it just a little bit of a red hue to it, like a tinge of red that's still a touch warm. So going in, heavy dry brushing. If we get a little bit of it down into the cracks, and not much of it should go down there, that's okay, because it's just going to darken that a little bit. Just don't be like trying to paint it in there, and you should be fine. So for all of the Ironearth bases, after we completed the burnt red dry brushing, the next layer dry brushing that I did was using pure black from Reaper. Again, this is just the paint that I had at hand. Any matte black should work appropriately for this purpose. But what we're going to be doing is doing a dry brush over these, and this is to give more of that burnt, cooled lava effect to it. You don't have to go in as heavy, you don't want to make it black, but you definitely want to be dry brushing it enough that you're getting a lot of cooled effect to it. So what you're trying to get is the idea of warm rock over lava as opposed to hot rock over lava. If you've ever looked at like lava flows and how they crack, like the basalty type lava crust on top is a very dark black color. Because the Mordant Earth is already black, we don't really need to dry brush that. So after dry brushing, I've gone and black rimmed these and to finish them off. So first one we have here is yellow with orange over it. It looks okay, you get a little bit of the yellow on the edges, but it's still pretty dark in color. The next base I'm going to be showing here is this is yellow over yellow. So I'm starting to really like how the yellow is punching through. This is my experience with these types of bases, that you really need to have a bright color showing through. This is yellow over orange, which of the Ironearth bases is personally my favorite. Here we have Mordant Earth over orange on orange, which I really like the look of the Mordant Earth when it comes right down to it. Here we have, this is just Ironearth over orange on orange. It's getting a little bit dark in the edges there. And now we're getting into, I believe this is the red over red with Ironearth put on top of it. And the final base, which was started with red, with orange, and then yellow with Ironearth on top of it. I don't think that it really showed well. The reds, it kind of blooded out. And here again, we have the orange on orange with Mordant Earth over it. For the textures, I think that was the best texture. That little red hue pops really well. And here we have the yellow over orange undercoat. So I think taking the Mordant Earths and putting it on the example we have on the left here, I think would be probably the best base we could get. Hopefully this video gave you some ideas and inspirations for your own projects. If you liked it, please give the video a like. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to the channel. I put out miniatures videos weekly. If you want to see what I'm working on, follow me on a variety of social media. It's sleepywhatsit everywhere. And other than that, I look forward to seeing you in the next one.